Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Las Vegas Raiders Insider Podcast. We are your Las Vegas Raiders beat writers on Sports Illustrated. I'm Hondo Carpenter. He's Ezekiel Trezevant. We're both here in the facility. In fact, we both just walked out of practice. It was great to see walking into practice. Maxx Crosby was here in the parking lot, and he called me over to say hi, and it was good to see him. He just got back from North Carolina on his surgery, and he was in good spirits. It was good to see him. He wasn't out at practice, obviously, but was here at the facility, and it was good to see my buddy and to chomp it up with him for a couple seconds and just say hi. And again, love seeing his smile and his love and zeal. Can't keep him out of this building, Zeke, can you, in any way?
Yeah, no. That's I mean, Max may as well go ahead and sign a lease at the facility because he's always here.
All right, let's start to dig in on the mindset of the silver and black, and let's start right with the fans. I think if you were to ask 10,000 fans, 9,998 would say lose, 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 tank, tank, tank. Their mindset is just the number one pick. They don't want to win. They don't want to lose this. They want number one. Do you agree? You're a fan. I'm not. Do you agree with that? I'm going only on what I hear from fans, what I see from fans. Am I wrong or right?
So I want to clarify so I can make sure I'm answering the question you asked me. Are you asking if the fans are saying that, or are you asking me if I agree with that what they're saying?
No, I'm asking you do you think I'm right? The vast majority of fans are tank, 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 lose, lose, lose.
Oh yeah. I think I mean, especially at this point in the season, a couple of games left. I think most fans would say go ahead and lose. The last couple of games, and I think another important factor is the fact that there are so many teams that are basically within a game or two of each other in terms of the draft standings. To where if the Raiders win one game, they're going to drop from number 2 to number 7 or number 8 to number 9, and then at that point, you're not too far away from being in a similar position as what you were last season in terms of draft positioning. So yeah, I can definitely see where some fans are coming from.
All right, now let's go in another direction. I think the owner, the players, the coaches are all win, 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 win. None of them are in a tanking mentality. Agree or disagree?
Yeah, no, I agree. I don't see anything that makes me feel like they're not trying to win. Now, the flip side of it is that unfortunately they're not good enough to win. So, right, it kind of goes both ways on that one, right? So, I think in that sense that there's nobody out there actively trying to lose. When I think tanking, I think, hey, we're going out there trying to lose, and I don't think that's necessarily the case with these guys.
Okay, I made an observation on yesterday's podcast, which you're well aware of. It got a lot of response. I said, if Aidan is able to play and plays, that tells you everything about their mindset for winning. Now, if he can't play and doesn't, that's not what I'm talking about. But if he's able to play and they play Desmond, that would tell you that they may be hedging their bets a little bit. But if he's able to play, he's the guy. Now, at practice, I was talking to someone in the organization. You were actually watching practice. What was your thoughts watching practice today?
And just in a very general sense, there's a lot of pop, if you will, to practice, right? A lot of energy there, even amongst the losing streak, right? So there's no heads that are hanging. There's nobody out there that's kind of just going through the motions. Everybody seemed like they were putting the work in. And I know it sounds cliche, but it's the truth, right? From everything that we can see from when we're there, it looks like those guys are again putting in the work to get better and do the best they can. In terms of Aidan, I agree with you, but I do think with Aidan that he has to be full. I mean, you got to think he's already not very mobile, right? So if that needs to the point where he's any less mobile, any less mobile than he already is, even a little bit, you might not want to play him because he's already so not mobile as it is. So I think that's a huge thing, right? So even if Aidan goes out there and he's running around and he looks kind of okay, or he looks about 95%, you got to think, when as they say, when the live bullets are flying on that field, is he really going to be able to step up in the pocket? Is he really going to be able to move around when that pressure hits? If you're not 100% certain about that, maybe it's best that you do start Desmond.
Are you implying that Aidan O'Connell is the Hondo Carpenter of quarterbacks?
He's got a little bit more mobility, but yes, it is very little. But yes, in a general sense, yes, Aidan, and I think that even watching him warm up before the Falcons game, again, he's running, he's rolling out of the pocket, and he looks okay, but I wouldn't feel safe putting him out there on that field with 11 grown men trying to knock his head off, and he can barely move. I just don't think that's a good idea.
when we're with him in about 20 minutes in the locker room, I'm going to take you with me, and I'm going to tell him on today's podcast you called him the Hondo Carpenter of mobility with a hurt knee.
Yeah, but Aiden is a cool dude for sure.
He'll crack up. That'll make him crack up. All right. So let's talk about the fact I fully expect it to be Aidan on Sunday versus the Jaguars. Your thoughts?
Yeah, I do think that that's what's going to happen. In terms of Aiden, being the guy. I think obviously this week it's just more time off, right? In terms of he didn't play on against the Falcons, so that's a little bit more time off for him to get that rest. And I think it's just going to be more time for him to get that confidence back in that knee and be ready to go. So I think Aiden is I think this is where that chip on his shoulder kind of comes into play, right? He's already had to battle through so much adversity. If he can at all go, I think he's going to go just because he doesn't know when he's going to get this opportunity again. He may not get this opportunity again. And I think it also brings a little bit of even more respect from your teammates, right? Because everybody's hurt. Everybody's banged up. And when you say, hey, I can go, the injury wasn't as serious as I thought, let's push through it. I think that garners a little bit more respect on top of everything else he's already done.
Today in the press conference for Patrick Graham, I asked him about the fact that this team, with this defense, with all of the injuries, starters, backups, I mean, so many injuries, it's ridiculous. They're still playing at a relatively good level, which is stunning to me, considering how many guys they've lost. I mean, they still just held an NFL football team to 15 points. To me, I think it's very amazing what he's done. He said it's about winning. It's a league that only matters in winning. Um, but overall, he does take, some comfort that the guys who are getting in there are learning and performing. I'm seeing a lot of things, people who are evaluating this team that aren't here all the time. They're national media. The Raiders need to rebuild. They do not need to rebuild. They need to reload. But anyone that thinks the problem with this team is the defense, to me, has football mental comprehensive issues. Agree or disagree?
Yeah, well, that or either they're not watching the actual games and they're just watching the stats and the scoreboard, if you will. So yeah, I think if personally, I can speak for myself. It gets to the point where I'm looking forward to the defense getting out there. Right, that's the most fun part of the game, whether they're winning or losing. I want to see the defense play, and usually they do their job. And I think a couple of things. I think with Patrick, he's always given the answer you want your coordinators or your coaches to give. Hey, it's wins and it's losses. That's the answer he's supposed to give. That's how he's supposed to look at it. But from our standpoint, I mean, that's our job, is to notice those wins and those smaller wins that don't necessarily translate, on the wins and loss, if you will. So I would say he has the right answer, but I would also say, look at what that defense has done. I mean, even aside from look, the injuries is huge, right? That's 5 or 6 different injuries that, I mean, who can really survive that? And they still go out there and they still battle and they still play with countless rookies and young players on that defense. So you kind of have to tip your hat. And I would also just throw out the point of, if we're talking about complementary football, think about the bad positions that this defense has been put in because of the offense's struggles this season, right? You got to take that into account too. And I think that goes, that plays a part in this.
Well, you can argue if you look at just the game against Atlanta, how many points did they give up because of the offense's either turnovers or bad plays? And then they found themselves, in the shadow of their goal line. I think the defense has played well. All right, let's flip it over a little bit. I talked to Scott Turner, as you know, you were sitting next to me, about the fact that this is a win or loss league. It's the only reason they judge success or failures, win or losses. But there are 3 young offensive linemen that are really coming. Delmar DJ Glaze, the mule, JPJ Jackson Powers Johnson, and Jordan Meredith. Obviously Dylan Parham is in there, but he really talked about, other than Jacoby and really other than Colton, this is a young offense all around. I think he said there are 6 guys starting who are first or second year guys. Again, I don't think the issue here is a rebuild. I think it's a reload. Talk about this youth on the offense, please.
And I know we're speaking about the offense, but I'll say that you got to point out that it goes both ways, right? I mean, even on the defensive side of the ball, even with their defensive starters, they were already in terms of defensive backfield, they were already one of the younger teams, right? Now you're putting a bunch of rookies in there because of the injuries. They got even younger on the defensive side of the ball. That's on top of how young they are on the offensive side of the ball. And you got to think, when it comes to offensive line, That's one of the positions. That's one of the position groups where experience goes a long, long, long way. And I think the fact that these guys, these younger guys, are getting that experience and they're getting that cohesion together is great. Also, want to point out, I think offensive line is a bigger issue here for the team, just in general, not necessarily the rookies, but I do think offensive line is a bigger issue here than most people want to realize. Mainly because, and I'm not saying that as in these players are not good or they don't have the right players, but the players that they have on the offensive line altogether, they have, 1, 2, 3 great ones, and then other places as a unit, they could be better, basically, right? And offensive line, that's one of the few positions on the field where everybody where what the guy does to you next to you, what he does impacts your job. They have to be better altogether. And those 3 young guys that you named are going to get them going in the right direction.
All right. I think there's a very good chance that the Raiders will win one of these last 3 ball games. I have reported in the last 2 podcasts that while there seems to be a mentality that Shedeur Sanders will only play for the Raiders, I have not talked to Shedeur or Dion, but people close to the situation have told me that is not the case. Then I reported it, and the next day Dion did an interview and kind of made it clear. Is this a Shedeur or bust draft for the Raiders? I don't think it is, but I know the fan base has eyes for Shedeur. In fact, I was told by one person, this fan base looks at Shedeur like you look at Shannon. Is this to the fans, is it a Shedeur bust? But in reality, do you think it's a Shedeur or bust for the organization?
So I think that's going to be the most interesting. That's the $1 million question this offseason. To answer the question quickly in terms of where we sit right now, I don't think the front office looks like that. Do I look at it like that? I do think the fan base does. For obvious reasons, you want the big name, the sexy name. But I think personally, I think Tom Telesco in the front office, they're going to take a lot more of a leveled approach. They're going to look at all their options, and we've already seen Tom is going to go best player available BPA. So keep that in mind. And it's just my personal guess. I think he leans heavily on BPA. Like that's not just something he kind of did for one draft. I think that's his way of life when it comes to drafting players. So if he has to decide between Shedeur and maybe somebody that's a better athlete at a position they need, that might win out. But I also think on the flip side, the fact that they should be picking so high, it may leave it to where they kind of have to pick Shedeur. I can see both sides.
I can. So Travis Hunter wants to play both sides in the NFL. I've talked to numerous people at the owners meetings. Nobody thinks that any one player can play full time both sides. They just don't think it's feasible. And what I'm hearing from people is whoever picks him is going to have to say he's primarily a defender, primarily an offensive player, but will have packages for him on the other side. What do you think of that?
Listen, I completely agree. In terms of it's tough to play both ways in the league consistently, right? I mean, the league is it'll batter you up just one position, right? Let alone playing 2. But from the little bit that I've seen from Hunter, I also feel like he's naturally a better cornerback. He's a better cornerback than wide receiver, in my opinion. And I think he has the potential to be a great cornerback in this league, especially if he focuses in on that. And then I do think, you throw. I mean, teams have packages of all kinds, right? 5, 7, 10 players for a particular player. And I think that would be a good idea for Hunter. But mainly and primarily, I would like to see him, line up the cornerback and shut down one half of the field, basically.
Yeah, that's fascinating to me when I look at that and how the draft is piling out. So let's talk about the mindset. I was at the owners meeting. You were here in the building, holding it down here. Thank you, by the way.
Yes, sir.
And the mindset of Mark is obviously hates the losing. This is a franchise whose motto is just win. But he also didn't seem to be, depressed. I think there's a lot of rejuvenation here. I think there's a lot of excitement to this upcoming offseason with Tom Brady. As you know, we've been reporting at SI. We were told by internal people over a year ago that Tom's voice was going to be very big. Mark went a step farther and said it's going to be huge. But I think there is some reinvigoration, maybe not with the fan base, but with Mark about adding Tom Brady. He's genuinely excited. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, I feel like it's hard to not be. And I'm kind of, looking on the outside, from the outside looking in. But I mean, put yourself in, in Mark's shoes, right? He knows he needs help. He knows he needs somebody that knows what they're doing, has a great football insight that maybe he lacks, right? And I'm not sure that we can even say maybe he lacks. I think, it shows itself, right? Mark knows he needs help in that area, and who better to get than Tom? And I think once you look from the top down, the excitement starts from the top, and it's only going to go throughout the rest of the team, especially as the draft gets closer. So I think Mark is looking at it like, hey, at least I'm trying. I know what I don't know. I'm getting somebody in place that can help me out. And at that point, you kind of have to let the chips fall where they may.
Totally agree with you. All right, last question. I realize that we are sitting here in late December. By the way, Merry Christmas to everyone. Merry Christmas to you and Jazz and the kids. But if you had to pick today in the first round of the 2025 NFL draft, who are the Raiders selecting?
So I'm going to assume they get the number one pick. And if they get the number one pick,
That's a big assumption.
I think, or at least, or worst case, number two. Sometimes I forget how bad the Giants have been this season in terms of standing. But yeah, the Giants are there as well. So number one and number two, I think that they're going to go with. I do think they're going to pick Shedeur. I think that's where Tom is going to come in, right? Tom has that connection. I think he's going to have a large say on that pick. And but again, obviously, if they win a game and now they're picking 8th, 9th, or 10th, well, it's a little bit different of a story.
If they have the number one pick, I predict they will take Shedeur.
Yes.
If they don't, I don't think that Shedeur's all bets are off. Yeah. All right. He's the great Ezekiel Trezevant. I'm Hondo Carpenter. Zeke, tell everybody where to find you on social media.
Yes. EZ T as in Tom, REZ_SI.
Awesome. Check him out. He's worth a follow. We'll see y'all tomorrow.